So I'm Father Charles Sikorsky, president of Divine Mercy University, and I'm really blessed to be joined here today by Dr. Bob Schuchts, who is the founder and director of the John Paul II Healing Center. And welcome, and thank you so much for taking time to be with us.
Yeah, thank you, Father Charles. It's really good. I love the work that you guys are doing.
Well, thank you, and we admire what you do. And maybe you could give us a little bit about your background and how you ended up where you are today.
Okay. Yeah, I got my, I'll just start at the point of my degree. I got a psychology degree at Columbia, and then master's and doctorate at Florida State. So it was a secular degree, but I had two Catholic friends that went through all my doctorate program with us. And so it was a great opportunity to start to integrate. And yet there was still something really missing in terms of the foundation, which is what I love about what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
And I went into counseling, and then I started to run into my own healing after I was a therapist and teacher, and I was teaching college programs, and that drove me both into therapy for the first time and also to a renewal, spiritual renewal. And it was the combination of those two things, the doing the work in therapy and the spiritual renewal, that all of a sudden they came together in a way that up before that it was more here, and as that, like, it spiritually became real, like the intimacy. And from that point on, I really developed a hunger to integrate, and that's what we do now at John Paul II Healing Center, is this integration of the psychological world with the Catholic faith and John Paul II.
You know, you mentioned that. I one of the things that I shouldn't have been surprised by, but it did surprise me over the years working here at DMU, is some of our graduates saying, I feel perfectly prepared for my career, and I loved everything I learned, but I ended up learning more about myself in studying this field. And I think people are aware of that. When you study counseling or psychology, or even our spiritual direction program, you have to think that there's a lot of self-reflection that goes into it. And,
Yeah.
You can really, hopefully it'll be an experience that really helps you develop one further.
Yeah, it shakes you up at first.
Yeah. So then you practiced for a while, and then
Of 35 years.
35 years. That's a long time. And then you decided to stop that and shift it to the JP2.
Decide is probably too strong. I eventually decided, but I started working with priests and seminarians way back while I was still a therapist. And then I was doing marriage conferences and men's conferences, and all of those things developed such a momentum. And the Theology of the Body Institute, I was working up there. And so it all just kind of came together, and I couldn't do my therapy work anymore because this was just really growing. And so that's when John Paul II Healing Center started.
And what was it that made you see the need for that?
Well, the need was just so apparent in every group. It was like people just needed permission to have that integration, and they needed permission. They needed a language, and so, the language of the church and the language of the experience as a therapist and a teacher just came together, like what you did.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what the John Paul II Healing Center does. I know I've heard many great things from priests who've gone through the different retreats, but you also do a lot for lay people, and I suppose, are they all Catholic, or are people with a spiritual life, or others?
Mostly Catholic. We get a portion of people who are other Christian denominations or people who are searching. But we have a bishop's retreat once a year. That's been beautiful and powerful.
Mm-hmm.
We have 3 retreats for religious women, one for superiors, one for leaders, and one for sisters. We just had like 12 years of seminary and a month-long retreat. Now we work with the formators in the seminary. We have a thing for married couples, a thing for the general population called Healing the Whole Person, podcasts, Restoring the Glory, and then we have a men's conference and a women's conference. So
Okay.
we're kind of the whole,
You're busy.
the whole
Yeah.
church.
And when you talk about healing center, maybe tell us a little bit of what are the aspects that need to be healed, and how, like, we're incarnational beings. There's a human part, there's a spiritual part. That's just the truth. It's just reality, and so much of secular psychology kind of reduces it just to the human, and sometimes you can over spiritualize it as well. How do you go about that, and maybe in your experience, like what?
Yeah, I think because of my own experience of integrating that, it just naturally gets expressed in everything. It's just seeing it together. So we talk about the effect of sin is wounds. So we talk about the 7 deadly sins and the 7 deadly wounds. And that if we only deal with the sin, like in confession, and we're not attending to the wounds become the festering ground for the sins. And so we want to address both of them, but we want to address them not in a secular sense, but with the understanding of science, but also with the understanding of the Holy Spirit and how the teaching of the church. And John Paul II's teaching, kind of like DMU, comes just through everything.
Well, yeah, we had a bishop who visited one time, and he was in his homily. He said, without the fall, there'd be no need for a psychologist or a therapist, right? And we never, call things by their appropriate name.
There'd be no need for a priest either.
There'd be no need. Well,
Right.
that wouldn't be. It'd be a lot different.
Yeah.
And so, how do you see? I know you have a great experience of integration and much experience in psychology, and also working with priests and the spiritual aspect of it. It's kind of hard for a priest to be a psychologist. It's kind of hard for a psychologist to be a spiritual expert. What do you recommend? Like, we've tried to do some things at DMU to get cooperation between priests, spiritual directors, and counselors and psychologists. How do you see that, and any suggestions to make that?
No, I think that's tremendous. I think it's important for both to have some understanding of the other so that they're not speaking cross language. But yeah, there's a gift that the priest and the spiritual director has, and there's a gift that the therapist, counselors have. And, one starts at the human and integrates the spiritual. The other starts at the spiritual and integrates the human. So as we work with the priest, they're needing their own healing. And as they get their healing, they're then able to know kind of an internal level how to communicate the spiritual into the human in a way that they've experienced.
Yeah. And dealing with those wounds, right? Because the sins can be forgiven, but they leave a mark, right? God forgives, but nature never forgives. And so many times we walk around, and really for grace to take its full impact, from more the psychological aspects, we heal those wounds, and like grace, there's like the colander effect, someone once called it, right? That grace just kind of, I get forgiven, but I come back with the same sin all the time. I can't break this bad habit. Well, we got to kind of heal that nature too, right?
One of the things we have in our teaching, how Jesus uses the tree and getting to the roots of the tree all the way through. So we have an image of a tree. We have the sins up the top as a tree. And then we have the deadly sin at the trunk of the tree. And then the ungodly self-reliance, which underlies the sin. And then all the woundedness at the bottom, underneath the ground. And so it's often the hidden aspect that we don't see, but it keeps manifesting in the sin.
As it does. So for our students or aspiring students who really want to be faithful Catholic professionals and really do their scientific work well, based on your experience, what words would you have for them?
Well, one is John Paul II's anthropology, which I know the anthropology of John Paul II, which I know is a core to DMU.
Yes.
That is so foundational, because if you don't have a right vision for who we are as human beings, and that theology of the body and everything that he's developed in terms of the human person is actually the great integration of the human and the spiritual. So that is a foundation. Second thing is our prayer life and our sacramental life. If we're not doing that, then the knowledge puffs us up, St. Paul says, rather than get built up. And then the third is our own healing journey. That there's and that Jesus is the center of that. Even in secular work, if Jesus is the center of that work and we allow the Holy Spirit to direct it, then we're not just rationalizing ourselves through it, we're allowing the transformation to take place.
So understand, learn anthropology, be a man or woman of prayer, and know that Christ is put Christ at the center of all your work. Yeah, very good. Yeah. And well, thank you so much for being with us. Your thoughts, I know you've mentioned a couple times of the anthropology we do have and teach at DMU, and you didn't have that. And I know some people, have done like you. I was talking to someone the other day. Well, I actually, one of our faculty members went to a very secular institution, but I had two friends, and we just started doing it on our own. But we try to give people a shortcut at DMU. So we appreciate, So that's kind of what we're trying to do. So just thank you for being with us, and appreciate it. And any words for our students as far as if they're thinking about a career, and if you're not, there's a lot of people who aren't. Right. We get a lot of former seminarians who are religious or religious sisters, or focused missionaries who are kind of like, I'm not called, right, to be a priest or a missionary for my whole life, but I want to help people on a deep level. I can't think of a better field to do that.
Yeah, it's been incredible. It can be taxing, so you really have to have self-care. But you get into the depths of the human person's heart in a way that hardly anyone else does. And that's why it's so important that we have that spiritual cleanness, purity of heart that we're continually growing in. But it's a great profession, occupation, but it's more than that. It's a vocation. And so if you're called to that, just live it from your heart with Jesus.
Thank you so much. Now, you've written so many great books, and your website, where would people, if they want to get more information about the retreats and books and stuff?
John Paul II Healing Center. All the books are there. And Restore the Glory podcast. We have a lot of stuff that you can download for free and listen to.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Schuchts, and great to talk to you.
Thank you, folks.
God bless you.
God bless you.